What is up, Financial Freedom Fast Fan Part 2, Aaron Amuchastegui. If you didn't listen to Part 1, go listen to it from yesterday, or just listen to Part 2 and then listen to Part 1, whatever you want to do. If you like this podcast, leave us a 5-star review and share this with a friend. Financial Freedom Fast Fam, you are all appreciated. But without further ado, let's jump into the pod. Now, I heard a quote that you brought up in some interviews in the past, and there's a whole story that needs to be told about where this comes from. But it's from one of it. I think it was your daughter who said this, but she said, "Dad, you'll never believe this. I'm the one that got everything done and knew more than everybody else." I think it was she got some type of work
Yeah,
done,
I know the story, yeah.
and I'm the only one that knows long division. That's what it was,
That's
right?
the quote, man, you nailed it.
And man, amazing story. I want everyone to hear this, man. Let's dive
Yeah.
into that.
So, like, 2016, we're making money again, but I'm doing it where I'm working 4 days a month. I'm flying out to Texas, I'm spending 4 days out there, I'm flying back to California, the rest of the month is family time. Very cool. Not only did I get a second chance at auctions, I got second chance at auctions in a state where it only happens once a month. In California, it was every day. There weren't days off. But like my new design was I got to have weeks off. And so we started to get really intentional about what that was like. And one week we booked a trip to Yosemite. Some friends of ours, the Christies, had actually booked this trip to Yosemite and said, "Hey, let's do this together." And we booked it like a year prior. We got a great deal to go stay at these cabins in Yosemite for like $300. And the time when we booked it, we weren't doing that great financially. And so part of why we booked it a year in advance. So then that trip's coming up, and it's a week that they're supposed to be at school. And we're like, we just got to do it. And what's funny is when that's coming up, we're like, oh, we're stressed. Maybe there's some stuff that we got to be able to do. That's all right. We'll take our kids' homework with us. And because our oldest daughter at the time, she's 7, she's like in school, but it's 7 now when you're at school. Like in a lot of schools, they're like super intense. It's like super intense, like real homework, real lessons, real things like that. So we like go out to Yosemite and we're going on this vacation, but we're planning on, I'm going to also do a little bit of work. She's going to do some homework. We get out there and where our cabin is, there's no cell service. There's no cell service. There's no internet service where we're at. No Wi-Fi, no anything. And so we have like at least a few hours of panic. Oh man, should we leave? Should we go somewhere else? Mind you, then you look outside and it is one of the most beautiful, incredible places on the planet. And so we got to a point where we're like, you know what? We are here. We're just going to do it. We're going to forget about it. We were forced into having the perfect sort of vacation that we didn't even know we needed yet, where there was no phones, there was no internet, there was no outside people, there was no distractions. And we spent that week like hiking and bike riding and like going and seeing waterfalls and having all these epic family experiences, right? Like learning from rangers about glaciation and like going out and seeing where these birds are, like these peregrine falcons are like hatching, like really amazing stuff. And I feel like our kids are learning stuff like crazy. We're learning stuff like crazy. We're having these amazing things. We're doing the things where you're hiking to the top of a waterfall and the kids are crying and they're whining and we're like crying and whining. Man, this is super hard. And we get to the top and we're like, oh my God, look at this view. And they get to feel accomplishment and we get to feel accomplishment, like best week or two of our life. The week or two, I don't remember. And end of it, we're like, that was really cool. We learned so much. We had some great experiences. We're never going to forget that. And as we're starting to drive home, I could see the stress in my 7-year-old daughter start to come back of, oh my God, I didn't do my homework though. I didn't do my homework. And we get back to the house and Clean is cooking dinner. It's like Sunday. And I said, you know what? We're just going to sit down and do it. Now, prior to that, I think my life was similar to yours, where I was on stage teaching people about the 4-hour work week, teaching people like how can I work 3 days a month and the rest of the month not do anything. And part of that was like focus without distraction. Part of that was batching. So I sit down with Maddie and for the next 2 hours, we just do her homework. And like I have her doing it as fast as she can. And the moment she gets stumped, I teach her about that moment. And then she keeps going. So I'm just sitting next to her. And so for 10 minutes, I do nothing. And it's really like the way that school should be taught. Like the fastest way for school to be taught is kids like learn. And as soon as they get stumped, somebody's there to help them with what they're stumped on. And then they get to keep going. One of the problems of a larger classroom is if one kid gets stumped on step 2, everybody stop. Either the class goes past him and he gets stuck on step 2, or they stop at step 2 and then nobody else gets to keep going. If a teacher is teaching something, it's going to be either to the fastest or the slowest person. One-on-one education is like the fastest, most productive. So long story short, 2 hours later, we finished a week or two of homework for Maddie. She feels so accomplished. And afterwards, she's like, wow, I can't believe we did that. But it was, again, it was from like the 4-hour work week methods of like focus and without distractions and helping her. So we drop her off at school. She's now super confident because she had been gone for a while. And yeah, we go to pick her up from school. And I go like, how did you do? Because again, she was super nervous. Back then, she felt a lot of pressure with her school. And she gets in the car. She goes, Dad, you'll never believe it. I'm the only one that knows long division. Because during those 2 hours, I had to teach her long division. And so it was crazy. Like, I remember learning that as a kid. I remember it being a big deal. Right. And it just happened to be like in that week that we were gone. And that was this profound moment for us, Matt, because then we were like, whoa, our daughter learned in 2 hours what she could learn in 2 weeks by learning this way. And we got to spend the time in Yosemite as a family. So that became our mantra the rest of the year. We started pulling our kids out of school a week or two every month. They were still going to school at the time. We pulled them out a week or two every month. We would take them on vacations. We wouldn't bring homework. We wouldn't bring phones. We wouldn't bring anything. We would come back, do homework on Sunday, catch up for those week or two. They'd go back to school. And we lived like that for the rest of the year. So probably 5 or 6 months. And then finally, like when the next school year started, we had them go in for a week or two. And again, we could see the pressure where Maddie's in, she's in like first or second grade reading at a 5th grade level. And they're talking about maybe she should be reading at a 6th grade level. And we're like, she's no. We started to see a lot more of the problems with the education system that in general that we see today. So we pulled our kids out of school and decided that like we were going to be their teachers with that. We wrote a book called The 5-Hour School Week, and it was based on our trip to Yosemite, where it was like in an hour a day, my kids can learn what other kids are learning in 8 hours a day at school. Plus we can go experience a lot of life together. And at the ages they were, it was perfect, right? Now they've transitioned this year because Maddie got sick. We needed some help and they started going to an acting academy where it's probably a mixture between what we were doing as homeschoolers to like more where they get a little bit more social, a little bit more interactivity with other people, a little less travel right now. But that was the story. It was a big aha for us just to realize, wow, like we got to just live life as a family, create these good memories. And like I could teach her in a couple hours what she would have learned at school.
Man, and I think by the time that I have kids, there's probably going to be a lot different with the school system. I don't know if some type of schooling collapses but I think there is a big realization that the traditional way of doing things, it's not the best way of doing things. And I love this new strategy, new way that you've created here. We are getting towards the end of the podcast. You've shown how your financial freedom that you've created has allowed you to do things like travel and spend more time with your family and focus on areas of your life that you want to be able to create. One area I did want to hit on is the health. Now, you recently did a 5-day water fast. Can you tell me why you did that? What is your reasoning behind that?
Yeah. There's 5 years ago, my health wasn't that important to me, right? When my dad died, it became a little bit more important to me. But I had never really challenged myself to do anything. And I remember I was at GoBundance and this guy told me that one day he was going to do an Ironman. It was one of his lists of like his top 5 things. And I was like, dude, that is the stupidest thing I ever heard of. I'm never going to do an Ironman. Why would you want to do that? And what was really funny is then like the long story short, then a couple of GoBundance guys were doing one. They invited me. I was reading a book at the time called The Surrender Experience Experiment that I got to the train. I had a bunch of experience that made me sign up for that thing. And I was the least healthy guy.
Michael
It
Singer,
did.
right?
I
Yeah.
had never run a 5K before. I wasn't planning on ever doing something like that. And I didn't really know what it was even when I said yes. So I went and did this half Ironman with a bunch of GoBundance guys, and it was just really cool experience of pushing through and all sorts of things. And that's when I got this kick of doing stuff that was hard for the benefit for later, health wise, which then helped me with my business and a bunch of other things. And so did a half Ironman last year. I've done a bunch of different things, but so the most recent health kick was like so that was like what inspired me to do it. Like I said, I have a cryotherapy machine in my house. I have sauna. Like I want to live for a long time, because my dad died too young. I'm starting to experience this life with my kids, and I want to be here. I want to live life to the fullest. I want to not just like go hike. I want to be able to hike far and not hurt. Right. So health is important. And I learned that from my mastermind. And I was at a Go Abundance event in December, and Jesse Eitzler was talking there, and he had mentioned like, hey, maybe before the end of the year, he likes doing a water fast. It helps start the year off a little lighter, a little fresher. It helps retrain. And last year, Maddie got really sick, and so during that time, before that, we were very like rigid and balanced in our health plan. When you're living in Arkansas and your daughter's in like a hospital all day, and the reality is we just ate fast food all the time. Like I cooked a couple times, but like we just ate, all of our good habits had fallen off to be bad habits. So like Christmas is coming, all my good habits had been bad habits. I was no longer like eating like vegan and crisp and doing all these things. And so I thought the water fast would be a great way to reset that based on some advice some other people gave me. Day after Christmas, I started my fast. So I ate really bad on Christmas. And then I figured that was a good week to do it because I didn't know really what to expect. But nobody's working in my businesses between Christmas and New Year's pretty much. My kids aren't like, nobody really has any expectations. If everything went to shit, that'd be fine. So I did 5 days, no coffee, no food between Christmas and New Year's Eve. It was great, right? It was great. Now, here's what I mean by great. There's a lot of benefits that I ended up feeling from this. Like the benefits was I had to drink a ton of water because when you're hungry and you're starving, whenever you think about food, just go get a glass of water and drink it. Then we've been told all our lives that like drinking a bunch of water is healthy, right? You also get this like gut gets to reset because all the stuff that's in your system eventually, clears out. And so when your gut stays empty for a couple of days, it's very healthy. It starts like rebuilding some stuff. It also puts you into a fat burning state because eventually you run out of any nutrients in your stomach and your body starts learning, oh, I have to go start burning my fat stores. And the fat's the stuff that nobody likes seeing on their body. We love seeing muscle. We never like seeing the fat. When you're in a fast, that goes away. And these extra benefits at day 4 and day 5 are any like precancerous cells die off and like cells start to regenerate and you generate stem cells, or it's either, or you activate stem cells that are there but dormant for them
Right.
to start. So there's all these healthy benefits to it. The first day I was super hungry and had a headache, mostly from no coffee. Midway through the second day, I stopped being hungry. My body started burning fat. I had energy. I was exercising every day. I went and walked on the golf course every day and played. And like by day 4, day 5, I was tracking my blood sugar and if I was burning fat and how cool it was. And I tell you what, at the end of day 5, I felt really amazing. And a big part of that was like I was having trouble before that with like willpower, like walking by the pantry at 9 o'clock at night and not wanting to
Mm.
eat just something for no reason. And when you go 5 days without eating any food, you realize like sometimes we eat out of boredom. And it's a lot easier to say no, like on the moment when you're like trying to fight those urges. And it was another thing that it really did for me, Matt, that was really like has just set a fire for me in the last 6 weeks. So this was, I guess it was 2 months ago now. I was 17% body fat when I started that. I had been much healthier before. I was just coming off of 6 months of like really bad, unhealthy decisions because it was hard to keep it all together. Right after the fast, I'm down to 12.5% body fat. I'm in a keto fat burning state as a result. I decided to stay in keto for the next month and a half with the goal of, oh, I'm just going to try to get below 10% body fat. A couple weeks ago, I fell below 10% body fat on that just from that jump start. Ran a half marathon 2 weeks ago, ran a marathon a couple days ago, which are again like things I hate. Like my wife loves running, and it was one of those things that like I learned with that first Ironman. If I can do stuff that I hate and prove to myself that I can do stuff that I hate, then it'll help me with all sorts of other aspects in my life. Man, I was leery about the fast. I was a little nervous about the fast. I will totally do one again, probably like twice a year. I think it is probably like I learned a lot from it. It's hard to explain like the different benefits. Like I don't drink as much coffee now anymore. I drink a lot more water. I've look different. I feel different. My gut's different. My like decision making process. I'm back to making good decisions all the time and having better willpower. It's a heck of a way that in 5 days that you could really jumpstart a change in your body.
I
And you just
loved
did
it.
7.
Uh, I did. I just ripped 7 and the same type of benefits. For me, I've got a good control on what I eat. I eat a lot of whole foods. But coming out to Paris, and I'm gonna be here for a month, it would be very easy for me to just go eat pasta and bread, and I'm still gonna go do that. but I wanted to be it's very easy for me once I start eating that stuff, since I don't usually eat it, for me to say, "Oh, I ate it yesterday. I might as well eat it today, and I might as well have it 3 times per day for the next month." So for me, that was more me setting myself into this mindset of we don't need food. We can go get food when I want it, when I'm going out to dinner, when it's an event, when it's a night when I need it. But it was a good mental challenge for me. It set me in the state. And honestly, it was easier to do it in this Airbnb that wasn't my normal home. I walked by the fridge. My first thought, like you said, let me go to the fridge. Let me see what's in there. If there's nothing good, I'll come back to it later. I'll downgrade it and I'll end up eating something in there. So, yeah, man, great stuff. Just to touch on your real estate a little bit, how would someone today, if they wanted to go do these courthouse auctions, is that still a thing that can be easily accessed, or is it only for the big players?
Yeah. The great question, and if we have time after this, I'd love to hear about maybe just a couple minutes about yours. We figured recording a podcast would be a great
Mm,
way that you and I could get to know each other and get
right.
to share some stories, but I've done 90% of the talking. So I'd love to hear after that about your real estate journey, at least really quick. I know most of your listeners have heard it, but I'd love to see where your 7,000 a month comes from. But foreclosures are still around. They're not around like they were in 2009, 2010. But I bought a house 2 weeks ago on the courthouse steps in Texas, the foreclosure. And it's a lot like 2010 where I'm going to fix it. I'm going to buy it, fix it, and sell it. And I'm going to sell it below market because a lot of people want to buy a house for $300,000 a day and everyone else trying to sell it for 500. Buy it for 200 at auction. I could sell it for 300. And so that's the market that we find ourselves in. There's a couple different ways now. As I have software for people nationwide. If people are going to buy a foreclosure in Texas, we have a website. It's called Roddy's Foreclosure Listing Service. It's flsonline.com, where someone can pay us to give them the list. Nationwide, I've got one called PropHawk. But the way to really do it, so if you want to do it for free, if you don't want to subscribe to anybody, I wrote a book about it too. It's like $10. Like I make 50 cents every time someone buys it, but it's called Bidding to Buy. If somebody wants to learn about foreclosures, all my secrets are in there. It takes 3 hours to read, and it breaks down how for free after that, like you don't have to pay anyone for the list. Like you could go to your courthouse, you could research the list, you could do title, you could come up with comps, and how even when I first started, I didn't have any money when it went to auction. Like it was the guys that I worked for their money. And then the next time it was like I went to an investor, like even though it was cash buying, like I went and proved out a system that it could work. And then I went to people and they invested in me. They invested in me and we split profits. And at the beginning, I did it for free to prove I could do it. And then I got 25% of the profit for the next 4 or 5 houses. And then I got to up it to 50% of the profit once I proved that I knew what I was doing and I wasn't high risk anymore. So people can get in. A lot of times people are like, oh, I can't do foreclosures. That takes all cash. It does take all cash, but nobody bidding at auction is using just their cash. I still don't even use just my cash on it. I'm still going to use other people's for it as much as I can. So a lot of times people get discouraged by that, but just like anything, finding the deal is the hard part. Finding the money is the easy part. So if you become good at finding deals, you can find that. There's also this big thing now where you can buy on the courthouse steps, Matt, or you can buy before it goes on the courthouse steps. Like everybody getting scheduled for foreclosure now also has equity because of the market. So you can get an even better deal by knocking on their door and saying, "Hey, your loan's $150,000. It's going to auction next week. Your house is worth 250, but you've only got a week to sell it. So how about you sell it to me for 160, 170? Like you can walk away with some money instead of getting foreclosed on." So lots of big businesses out there. If people want to follow me on Instagram, or I don't want to be selling anything, but like you asked, like on Instagram or with my websites, we give away so much data for free. I think that book is amazing. Again, I don't really make money on it. I wrote it to give all my secrets away to try to see if it would help people. All it did is create more competition when I'm out there. People like bid against me that read my book. They know my strategies. But I think foreclosure auctions are a really cool way to go. And when you can find the win-win where you buy from somebody before auction, you're actually helping them avoid foreclosure and they make money and you make money. That's the ultimate win-win.
Bidding to Buy, that book is called, by the way, and I'm gonna take a look at this after this. And just because you asked related to this conversation, my first property that I ever bought was a foreclosure. I bought a 4 unit that was foreclosed. I actually bought that one from the bank, and that's my house hack. I actually still live in that property. That thing was a full gut. Took me a year and a half. Oh my God. Biggest learning lesson of my life. Complete renovation. It was a condemned building. Didn't know what any of that meant when I was first buying it, but I bought this 4 unit, did this giant renovation over, literally ran into so many problems, people breaking into the house, people, my contractors getting hurt, switching for contractors. I was using FHA 203K loan, so I had issues with the bank that I had to get approved by them and then get my contractors approved and then have the town come and approve. Took a long time, learned a lot of lessons. Best thing I ever bought in my life. I live for free in that place. It also makes me around 1,700 bucks a month. Cash flows me 1,700 a month with the other three apartments rented out. And then right now I'm actually working on buying something in that in that pre-foreclosure area that we were talking about there, where this seller's about to get foreclosed on in we don't know the timeline on it because it's actually Discover Bank put a lien on their property, and so it's not like an official bank coming after their property, but because it's not the original lender, but they're still coming after the property. They have a lien on the property, and they can take the property. There's no timeline. We've tried to find out from Discover. The seller is like their family's getting involved, all this stuff. Right now, I have a contract on it at 35,000. I would say the place is worth around 140,000 as it sits, and I'm trying to get that thing closed. The family's getting involved. They don't want me to buy it for so low. I've offered more, but if I offer more, I need to kick the woman out of her house or she needs to pay more in rent. One of the agreements I made with a $35,000 purchase price is that she can stay. The woman who's lived there, she's going blind. She knows her house. She's lived there for 35 years. She could stay there, and for the next 2 years, she could pay me $200 in rent. That's what I look at for me getting a super good deal on this place. She could do that, but who knows? The family's getting involved. Apparently, attorneys are getting involved now, so we'll see where that goes, man.
Yeah.
But and we'll talk more about my portfolio after we hop off this. Final questions here. What's actually and I do just wanna ask, what is your this isn't one of the final questions. What does your portfolio look like today? So, it's probably more than 850 because that's been on your 850 doors, that's been on your Instagram for a bit now. What is that? What's your
Yeah,
portfolio
no,
look like?
the and it's different. So I've got a few hundred houses that are with a bunch of investors. That was when we first started in 2010, which people would come in and invest, and we would share in the profit and the revenue over certain amounts of rent. I have a few hundred that are in different levels with one or two partners on there. I have 100 that are just with my wife, and so we still have under 1,000 single family homes, but we also have like a 70 unit apartment complex. It's like a class A apartment complex. That's really nice. We have a $5 million climate controlled storage building that we built from the ground up. There's a lot of different assets. And then we have these real estate software companies that we bought those and grew those at time. The hedge. I remember in California when I got put out of business in 2013, there was 100 people at auction bidding on 3 houses. The only guy winning is the one selling everybody the list. So now in Texas, we sell everybody the list. So my portfolio is like houses, right? Single family houses. We self manage it. And some of those have various levels of partners and funds. And I've got fund partners and managers. And some of those, we've got others that we own just personally. We've got ones with other partnerships. But then the other assets are like the software companies and the businesses. And like we own a title company, different things that we tried. What we learned then was like with so much of our profits in 2020, 2021, 2022, we bought other things. We bought we bought more houses, we bought software companies, we bought title companies, we bought things that like let's say no everyone stops paying their rent, maybe storage will be fine. Let's say storage and everybody stops paying their rent. Well, the software should be good. What if there's a huge crash where all of my housing prices go to zero? Well, then my foreclosure data company should take off because there should be tons of foreclosures again. So we tried to invest. So my portfolio is not just houses anymore, but houses are still the simplest thing. I still buy houses as often as I can. I'm only flipping right now though.
So
I think that the prices are going to go down pretty heavily more over the next year. So I'm only like doing short-term flips. I'm not buying anything for long-term holds that I don't already have.
especially in Texas area, which is
Central
seen
Central Texas, we've had big corrections, high
right.
inventory right now. Like we had such a
Huge
boom that now it's slowed down.
huge appreciation and possibly a correction coming. So what does that put your cash flow at?
The Our horizontal cash flow is really strong, man. Like the when I talked about at the beginning, like 20,000 a month a couple years ago wouldn't have began to touch any of our investments or expenses that we have as a family now, or our needs. So yeah, we're not at $1 million a year in horizontal yet, but we will be soon. If I could just keep doing, if I get to keep doing really big stuff. Now we spend a lot. We spend a lot. We donate a lot. We invest a lot. But it was a really good bet. For years, for 3, 4 years, I was working really hard to grow that portfolio. And I remember thinking, like, we have worked really hard and I barely have anything to show for it. Am I sure this is the right move? I started that in 2015 is when I bought my first rentals, and I was like, let's just hit singles. It's been 8 years. And so 8 years of sticking with that same plan of buy stuff for long-term holds for that cash flow. Now we have the cash flow, but it's not enough to own a jet yet. I want to own a jet. I want to be able to fly private everywhere to save my family an extra 5 hours on every trip that we want to go on. There's like ridiculous stuff like that. So anyway, cash flow is strong. I'm super grateful, and I can't wait till it's 9 figures.
Hell yeah, man. I'm all about that. Excited for when you get that jet. Can't wait to watch the journey. What is final questions here? What is one actionable step that our listeners should take today to start on their path towards financial freedom?
It's funny. I would say, man, 60 days ago I did my 5-day fast, and my last 60 days have been taken off like a rocket again, and I've experienced that several times in my life. So I think that it's probably less about a financial thing as it is about a life thing. So I would say, like, if there's got to be something out there that you've said I'm going to do someday, and maybe it's two things. Maybe I'm going to go to Hawaii someday, or I'm going to go on this trip someday, or I'm going to take my mom on this thing someday. There's like a goal that you want to do someday that you should go plan and do in the next 60 days, because life is short and that person you were going to do it with might die for no reason. You might lose the opportunity, or like the building you were going to tour might burn down. Right. So if there's a big goal out there that you've been saying, someday I'm going to do this, it's been on your list for more than a couple of years, go schedule it, do it in the next 60 days and do it, because life is short. And it's going to teach you this new muscle to go do that. And something else, pick something really hard that you're going to do someday, whether it's run a 5K, run a 10K, run a half marathon, run a marathon, do an Ironman. Like, I'm going to go do a 29029 where we go hike a mountain a bunch of times. I've got a bunch of things on the list, but choose something that's really hard on the list that you think it'll take me years to do it. Schedule it 60 days from now and start today. Start today, because 60 days from now, you'll have done one of those big experiences. That are like the life-changing experiences that are going to be a memory maker with somebody or something, or for yourself. Plus, you're going to do something that's like really hard, and you're going to show yourself that I can do something hard. I can do something really hard I would have never imagined doing, because there's nothing that'll get you more grit as you start to build out your financial stuff. Because for me, building financial wealth is not easy. There's a lot of flashy ways, but it's going to get a lot harder over the next couple of years. So what you really need is like grit, and the idea of being able to have self-control and hard work and be able to postpone your the feeling for later. So I think those two things are what people should do for their financial journey, because it'll change their mindset and then they can change their life.
I love that, and the 60 days ahead thing is powerful too, man. You can accomplish a lot in 60 days, even if you just do maybe you're not a runner right now, but if you plan out a half marathon for yourself, or even if it's a 5K for yourself in 60 days, if you're really not a runner, you could easily get that done. You can start doing any training that you need to do. You could pull it off. And I like what you've said throughout the podcast, do stuff you hate because it makes everything else easier. I think that's a really awesome motto, and I'm going to put that into action. I need to decide what my 60-day goal is ahead from me and choose what I'm going to do here. This is our last question here. What is one question that you wish I asked, or a topic that you wish I had covered, and how would you have answered that question, or how would you have expanded upon that topic?
Yeah, that's a hard one. The reason I choose why is 60 days, when I just think about my last 60, right? Is I went from 17% body fat to 9. I'm down like 20 pounds. I'm back to eating healthy and everything else. So you would be amazed, people, right? About just what your percentage of change that you can do in a short period of time if you decide today. There's a story that people could find on some other podcasts about me going to prison when I was 20. And that is probably one of the craziest parts of my first time losing everything. And I think it's too long of a story and too much for now. But what I would say is there's also going to be people listening that have had something so horrible happen. They go, I could never actually do that. And here's why. And to be a convicted felon with an armed bank robbery charge and to be able to manage funds of millions of dollars for people in real estate, like that's my story. Right. And it was a bigger challenge. Like I had to perform even better to show people along the way how hungry I was and how that. But no matter what bottom you guys have hit out there, don't use it as an excuse to not do the dream, to not do the thing that you want to do. There's going to be something out there that everyone is meant for. And I was meant for real estate. This was my niche. I grew up in it. I've always been fascinated by flipping houses. Like people are like, why don't you buy more apartments? Why don't you just, I love flipping houses. I don't know why. That was my niche. Like, how did I scale? I had to raise money from other people. How do you raise money from other people at a business where you need cashier's checks when you're a convicted felon? There's ways. But so no matter what, you could take something bad that happened to you, a health thing, a financial thing, a bad decision, where you grew up, anything. You can take all these things and have it be a reason you don't succeed. Or you can say, hey, I'm gonna use that to be my empowering story for why I do succeed and how I can succeed. And I tell you what, dude, like I credit so much of my success to the fact that I lost it all and I was in prison on my 21st birthday, right? I wasn't doing what other kids got to do at 21. And so when I came out of there, I came out hungry. I came out desperate to make up for lost time. And I knew what it was like to lose it all. And yeah. So anyway, like the story that one of the Front Row Dad podcasts I'm on, I talk about it. The Go Abundance podcast, I talk about when I got interviewed on there. People come chat with me some other ways. And thanks for going so long today. Listening to so much of my story today, dude.
Hell yeah, man. What is for the people who want to chat to you? Where can my listeners or watchers find you online?
Yeah, so the Instagram is the best place to chat. It's at Aaron Amuchastegui. There's only one of me. I also host a podcast called the Real Estate Rockstars Podcast, where I interview real estate agents, not investors, but real estate agents. The largest podcast in the U.S. for real estate agents. If people want to learn to investors, go listen to like Bigger Pockets, listen to Matt here and some other things. But I'm all about real estate agents on my other podcasts. If you want to learn about homeschooling, our book's the 5-Hour School Week. I've got my book that's bidding to buy for foreclosures. But I love talking real estate. I love talking life. And I have met and hung out with so many friends that I met on Instagram, believe it or not. But Matt, this was fun. And I'm super glad that like in Tahoe a few weeks ago that you bumped into me, that you found me, that you're like, hey, I've been meaning to chat. Let's go do this. So I hope your podcast just continues to do well. I hope listeners share this and share it to their friends. What I always say on mine is if you got anything of value on this, send it to one friend right now. Finish the call, text it to them, say, hey, you got to listen to this. Do that for Matt, do that for me. We want to inspire people with our stories. And if you got any value and you share it, you can help inspire people too.
Right, man. And tons of value. I'm sure everyone took tons and tons of value on this. Living literally an all-out life. And I'm gonna I'm gonna dig in a little more on this felon thing after this. But from the Financial Freedom Fast podcast, we are signing off, and this is Aaron Amuchastegui. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.